world, it's Birdo Prey 5, Qapla, and welcome to my review of Star Trek Discovery, Season 3, Episode 11, not Citadel? It was supposed to be called Citadel. I mean, they released these titles months ago, but for some reason, instead of calling it Citadel, it's now called Su'Kal. Su'Kal. We'll find out why. So this is the episode where we find out the cause of the burn. Yes, the cause of the burn. So I want you right now to think of the most ridiculous, implausible, least believable cause of the burn you can possibly imagine. Like perhaps the burn was caused by hemorrhoids on Saru's ass and he sat down too quickly and caused the burn that destroyed all the dilithium in the galaxy, except the dilithium it didn't destroy because of reasons. And I promise you, whatever you just thought of is a better reason for the burn than what we're going to find out in this episode. Yeah. It's one of those. It's one of those. You think, is it the Q? Is it the Guardian of Forever? Was it the Pa-Wraith? The Pa-Wraith, could the Pa-Wraith have come back and caused the burn? Was it evil Federation scientists? Okay, was Dr. Evil himself in the Nebula? And he's like, Austin Powers, I'm gonna get you finally. No. These would all be better choices. These would all be better choices. Okay? Is it the Grinch? Is it Deej Odyssey, the Grinch who stole baby Grogu from a poor woman at a Walmart? Was he the cause of the burn? No, would have been better. Would have been better. Would have been more believable. Was it Harvey Cthulhu? Oh, would have been better. Was it the unholy union of Hillary Clinton and an exact replica of Hillary Clinton that caused the burn? No, been more believable. So you think about that for a little bit. In the before the episode starts, telling us what was previously on Discovery, we are literally told that the Verubian Nebula, which is where they're going to go, Stamets says, this is where the burn started. And that is a direct quote. Stamets points to the Verubian Nebula and says, this is where the burn started. And that this ship crashed onto a planet that's in the middle of the Verubian Nebula a few years before the burn. Okay. We already know that before Discovery starts. And about 7 to 10 minutes into this episode of Discovery, Michael Burnham literally says, and again I quote, we triangulated the black boxes to a dilithium planet. I think we just found the source of the burn. Holy shit, Michael, you're only 4 episodes behind. They know that was the source of the burn. Everybody knew that was the source of the burn. You knew it was the source of the burn. Why did you just say you found the source of the burn? Anyway, I'm jumping ahead, but I had to get that part off because that was ridiculous. So this episode starts out at the ending of the memorial service for Georgiou. For some reason, there's 0 time skip between episodes. Adira is looking at the crew of the Discovery and seeing them all talking and reminiscing about how great a person Georgiou was. And Stamets says to Adira, you've got them now, and you've got us, meaning him and Culber. He says, we're kind of a package deal. And then suddenly, and without any expectation whatsoever, we hear a voice, and you've got me too. And it's Gray. Her invisible ghost boyfriend has returned. And she's like, Gray? And Stamets is like, Adira's like, you're back. And Stamets is like, is that Gray? And he knows where Gray is. He turns right to Gray and says, You're lucky we're at a memorial service. I'd give you a piece of my mind. And he leaves them to talk. And Adira is like, you, and Gray's like, I'm sorry. And Adira's like, that's all you got? You're sorry? Nobody notices Adira talking to herself at this memorial service. Gray apologizes, whatever. We don't really see much of him. After that, oh, okay, so then Stamets gets an emergency report on his, it looked like his wrist, but it had to be his holo badge. And he got an update. They're like, oh, you know what? The computer must have found something. And what did they find? There's a life sign. There's a life sign in the ship with a distress signal. So, of course, now that there's a life sign, Saru was like, oh shit, now we got to go. Well, yeah, Saru, you probably could have gone to that distress call 3 episodes ago, but whatever. So they're like, how could anybody survive after 125 years? And Saru's like, it wasn't Dr. Isaiah. They're like, how could Dr. Isaiah survive 125 years? Saru's like, it wasn't Dr. Isaiah. It's her child. And they all look at him like, what's she talking about, her child? He's like, yeah, you know those red things that were on her head that you guys all thought were radiation poisoning? I probably should have told you this earlier, but, wouldn't have made this moment as dramatic if I had. But those red things are actually normal for Kelpian women when they're pregnant. So I knew she was pregnant. I just didn't tell anybody she was pregnant, because if I told you she was pregnant at the time, you might have guessed that, oh shit, her child is probably still alive. And we wouldn't have had this awesome in quotes, scene where I reveal that she's pregnant and her child is still alive on the ship. So we're like, okay, we're gonna go. But first, they tell Admiral Vance of Vance Refrigeration that hey, there's a life sign. There's a life sign, and even better, the ship that they're communicating with somehow using Emerald Chain tech to enhance subspace communications, that they hacked into the ship, but they can't tell anything else of what's going on. But they can tell the ship crashed onto a planet that seems to be completely, well, first they say completely made of dilithium, then they say, well, it's full of dilithium. So it's a whole dilithium planet inside. And Michael, this is where Michael says, I think we just found the source of the burn. No shit. No shit. So Admiral Vance is like, so you found a dilithium planet? That's some good news. The Federation could use some good news now. He's like, yeah. And Saru's like, yeah, I decided I'm going to beam down with the away team this time. And, Vance doesn't say anything. He's like, I'm going to leave Ensign Tilly in charge. Ensign Tilly got the upgrade a couple weeks ago to acting first officer. But they're not calling her first officer, at least not yet. Literally in this episode, every time they call her, until she's actually made acting captain, they call her Ensign Tilly. Ensign Tilly, report to the bridge. Ensign Tilly, report to the mess hall. Ensign Tilly, Ensign Tilly, Ensign Tilly. If you're not going to give her the title, why bother? Why bother? She's just the ensign that you're leaving in charge of the ship before you leave. You should be calling her first officer, XO, number one. Eventually, Saru uses the term number one. But to Vance, he's like, yeah, we're leaving the ship to Ensign Tilly. And Vance just gives a look like, okay, I guess you people are just idiots. I don't know what to expect from you. Whatever. And Vance says, oh, by the way, before you go, just to put a little added pressure on you, FYI, I had to send half the fleet to Kaminar. Why? That's the Kelpian homeworld. And Saru's like, what? And he's like, yeah, Osyraa and the Emerald Chain started doing military exercises nearby. And Tilly's like, oh my God, it's like and Michael. They're like, oh, at Quagen, she attacked Quagen to draw out Book. So now she's attacking Kaminar to draw out Saru and Discovery, because Osyraa really wants Discovery and its spore drive, because everybody in the galaxy should want it, including the Federation, who probably shouldn't be letting it jump around the galaxy. But if it is going to jump around, maybe, send some support, whatever. So, yeah. Vance asks, is there any chance the life sign that they detected on this ship could be responsible for the burn? And they're like, no, it's not possible. So, of course, yes, basically. But we're going to get there. We're going to get there. So they jump to the Nebula. They jump outside of it. And then they're going to just fly in. But there's a giant storm of some type where the ship is getting bounced around, kicked around. They're getting a bunch of radiation is taking a toll on the shields. At one point, they're saying there's a massive collapse of hydrogen and dust. What's a massive collapse of hydrogen and dust? It's just hydrogen and dust forming a rock in space. I mean, that shouldn't be causing the ship to bounce around. Whatever. Terrible written episode. So Discovery is getting bounced around. Michael Burnham, of all people, is like, Saru, you're fucking up the ship. You better, turn back. I know you want to find your Kelpian friend, but we better turn back. And Saru is like, God damn it, push it harder. And then finally, Book is like, oh, I'll go. I'll take my ship. My ship is smaller. It'll be better. And finally, Saru relents. He lets Book go with his ship, and he takes Discovery. Discovery just jumps out of the Nebula back to safety. And Book's ship goes in. Now, Book is ignoring all the radiation warnings, and he finds a safe spot. He scans the ship. He finally gets the coordinates, both of the landed ship, the crashed ship. He said the crashed landed ship. He gets coordinates of where they need to beam into, and he gets coordinates of where Discovery can safely jump to, where the radiation isn't as bad. It's still bad. They can only survive there a few minutes or maybe an hour. It's not really clear, but they can jump in, beam people down, and jump out. So he sends all this info to Discovery as he passes out from the radiation, and the ship autopilots him back. And he gets back to Discovery, and they say, well, he'll be okay once they do a few cycles of DNA recombination. Michael meets him in sick bay after his DNA recombination cycles, and he's holding Grudge, the cat, which was, I guess, on his ship with him, though we didn't see him on the ship. And the chief medical officer of Discovery, also responsible for the health of his cat. Wouldn't his ship have like an EMH of some type? I mean, his ship is like a very futuristic ship. It should have everything he needs to survive, including medical facilities. He should have an EMH, an EVH, an emergency veterinary hologram. But no, the chief medical officer of Discovery is now taking care of his cat, including, he said, check, she was favoring her front left paw. So maybe you, chief medical officer of Discovery, have nothing better to do but to go look at Grudge's paw to give me and Michael a chance to talk a little. So Book is so happy. He's like, look at all this dilithium. It's a game changer. The galaxy just got so much smaller. No more far off worlds. We can visit them all. Michael confesses to Book that she's not so sure Saru's up to this mission. Michael Burnham says that Saru, she worries if he can make the hard choices. He's already compromised. Michael Burnham, mutineer. Michael Burnham never met an order she didn't disobey. She's worried about Saru. Also, so Michael tells Book that she's going with Saru. She has to go on this mission with Saru because she doesn't think Saru can make the hard choices. Dr. Culber tells Stamets that he's going on the mission too for reasons. He's like, I gotta go for me. And Stamets like, you can't go. We need you, me and Adira. Adira? Like, who the fuck cares about Adira? It's like, me and Adira, we need you. Culber's like, yeah, I gotta go. I gotta go for me. He's like, I never felt like I belonged, and then I came to the future, and now there's reasons, and I gotta go. I gotta go down. So now Michael and Tilly are talking right before, because Tilly's going to be left in charge. So Michael and Tilly are talking about, well, this is going to be Tilly's first command, and Michael's trying to give her some advice. And she says that the Shinzo, okay, the old ship at the beginning, the very first episode of Discovery that Georgiou was on, and the Discovery, which was a brand new starship at the beginning of Discovery. Both their captain's chairs have the same design flaw: a spur in the metal on the left side, underarm of the chair. And that Georgiou used to tell her that whenever she had a tough decision to make, she would feel for that spur and push her thumb into it, and it would help center her and remind her where she was. And the first time she left Michael in charge of the Shinzo, she felt around for it, and instead of it being a big spur, it had now become a dent, a shiny dent. I guess she looked, because she said it was a shiny dent that Georgiou had been pushing so hard for so long. She literally wore down a metal spur into a shiny dent. And she says, and Discovery's captain's chair has the same design flaw from the San Francisco shipyards. So the Shinzo and the Discovery were made decades apart. This Discovery went through so much of a refit that it's now the 1031-A, 1,000 years in the future. And yes, the same captain's chair has the same design flaw, which later when we see it is clearly a piece of metal glued to the bottom of the armrest, much larger than an M&M. Why did they not just cut it off if it was a design flaw? It just doesn't make any sense. But it's going to get worse, people. It's going to get worse. Going to get worse. So Culber and them, they all talk about before they go down. And Culber, and every time Culber says something, he's wrong, right? He was the guy, he was the genius who said, it is absolutely Michael Burnham's DNA in the Red Angel suit. And then the very next episode, when we find out it's her mother, like, oh, it could have been her mother. You know, mothers and daughters have very close DNA. He's the worst doctor ever of Star Trek. Like, honestly, I'd be hard-pressed to tell who was the best doctor, okay? I'd be hard-pressed to tell who was the best doctor. Every Star Trek doctor that we've previously seen has some redeeming quality. Okay, Bones probably had the best bedside manner. He was the least knowledgeable because of where he takes place in the timeline, but the best bedside manner. What's her face? Crusher? Hey, pretty face. She's also pretty good with medicine. Hell, even Pulowski was great at medicine. Bashir, super genius, can basically cure anything with his enhanced DNA. The doctor from Voyager, programmed with the knowledge of hundreds and hundreds of the best doctors of the Federation. All of them quality doctors. Wilson Cruz as Dr. Culber, worst doctor ever. He's not even the chief medical officer. He's just always, well, I don't know, why is he at all the meetings instead of the chief medical officer? Okay, for some reason, Culber gets to go to all the meetings instead of the CMO. But he's treated like the chief medical officer, but he's that bad. So he's like, we need to be back in sick bay 4 hours at the absolute most, and that's while taking boosters while they're on the ship. Okay, so we know that's not going to go well. So they beam down to the ship, insta-beam, of course, and they've all turned into different species. They're in the middle of a dark forest, and Culber turned into a Bajoran, Michael Burnham turned into a Trill, and Saru, the Calpian, turned into a human. So this is the episode where Doug Jones didn't have to wear his makeup. And I get it. It's fun. I'm sure it was fun for them on the set. But it makes no sense into the terms of the story, which we're going to find out again in another minute. So we get Doug Jones, no makeup. This time, Michael Burnham and Culber in a little bit of makeup for their various things. They come across a hologram. It's very clear that they beamed into a futuristic holodeck. The whole ship, perhaps, is a holodeck. There's holograms running that are teaching things. They're trying to ask, well, what is your purpose? She's like, I'm here to teach. But the program is breaking down because it's been 125 years in a high radiation environment. So half the holograms can't speak anymore, and they can barely speak. Half their words are corrupted. It's not very useful. Saru wisely attempts to at least say end program, computer end program, in both English and Calpian. It didn't work. He's like, well, I guess that would have been too easy. Yes, it would have. So when they beam down and they realize that they've changed species, they also realize all their equipment is gone. They don't have tricorders. They don't have phasers. They don't have a badge. But wait, your badge was your tricorder. So why did you need a separate tricorder? You see that the writers, they literally said, we don't have our badges, we don't have our phasers, we don't have our tricorders, and we don't have our medication. They forgot that they made the tricorder into the badge. The badge is your tricorder. So whatever. Maybe they're still getting used to the terminology because, it's new to them. So they don't have any supplies, and their holograms are possibly just masking it. So they don't know, because they were going to keep an open comms link with Discovery the whole time. Now, for whatever reason, the open comms link seems to mostly be between Stamets and Dr. Culber, but the rest of Discovery can listen in. So they're not even sure if Discovery can hear them anymore. And to be honest, we're not sure as the audience. What's actually happening is that Discovery hears, little parts of the conversation when it makes sense for the narrative. So they have 4 hours that they have to be out. They'll be sick, but they'll be okay. So Culber, they land on the planet. They don't have the drugs they were supposed to be taking, and yet they still have 4 hours. So Culber's like, yeah, we still got 4 hours. We'll be sick, but we'll be okay. So how did they have 4 hours if they took the drugs, and now they still have 4 hours even if they don't take the drugs? So they're just holograms. They're just holograms over their bodies. But they get to a point where they're looking down over a very high place, and Saru asks, do human bodies respond negatively to heights? Because his heart is racing. So Saru, who has lived among humans for decades, is unaware that many people have a fear of heights. But even more surprising is, why would him having a human hologram body give him a fear of heights if he didn't have a fear of heights to begin with? Okay, now they're trying to say that these aren't just holograms, but like somehow this is rewriting them into an actual human being. The writers have forgot what they wrote, or perhaps they just edited this so much they changed the storyline that maybe he was actually supposed to be made into a human somehow. But if he's just a hologram representation of a human, why would he have a fear of heights all of a sudden? Doesn't make any sense. Doesn't make any sense. Michael's like, this is an ancient step wall. It's used for irrigation. There are these giant flying things in the sky that they just seem to ignore. They find the Kelpian. First, of course, they're like, oh, maybe that hollow over there can tell us where the guy is. Of course, he's Kelpian, so wouldn't you think, well, maybe he's the guy you came here to look for, which, of course, he was. They get some little bit of transmissions on Discovery, but nobody's responding to them. So they find the Kelpian guy, and they're like talking to him, and he's like, who are you? He's like, what program are you from? Because it's quite obvious in an instant that he has never left the holodeck. He doesn't even know he's in a hologram, or he does know he's a hologram, but he doesn't know that there's a world out there. So he's like, what program are you from? Meanwhile, there's this big wooden door that has chains across it and something, pushed between the door handles to keep it shut. And Culber's like, well, I guess they don't want whatever's behind that door getting out. But of course, once they talk to the Kelpian, the door breaks open. He's scared. He's like, they talk about the outside, like, well, yeah, we're here to rescue you. You're from the outside world. He's like, outside world, ah! And then the door breaks open, and he runs. And Michael is Saru. Okay, Culber's like, we got to find this guy. We have a limited time. And so Saru says, okay, Michael, go find him. And Michael's like, no, I can't go, Saru. You've got to be the one to go. He responded to you the most. So Saru and Culber go to find the Kelpian. And Michael says she will stay here to fight off the monster or whatever was behind that door to make sure it stays inside the door. Fine. Michael is going to stay to find out what's going on with the monster. Back on Discovery, Stamets for the first time seems to be acting like a chief engineer. So Discovery, they jumped out of the Nebula. They have to fix their shields. It'll take them 3 hours to fix their shields for the 2 minutes they were inside the Nebula. And so they have 3 hours to fix shields, 4 hours max that they can be inside the ship. So they should have an hour to spare to jump back and rescue everybody. So that's the plan. Of course, it's not going to go to plan. Back out on the Discovery, Tilly in the captain's seat. They get, oh, Tilly, guess what? We're getting, there's a signal 10 minutes out, closing fast. It's a Federation ship. They don't know the name of the ship. And Tilly's like, hail it. Now, they won't respond. But they did send the correct authorization code or something. They sent the correct code. Well, wow, I wonder who this is, Tilly. So 10 minutes out, even Book knows, but he doesn't say anything. This is clearly not a Federation ship. She's like, there shouldn't be any Federation ships over here. Obviously, there's not. But for whatever reason, they don't immediately go to red alert. They don't immediately jump somewhere else. They don't do anything. They don't try to warn the people on the planet, that maybe they can hear you and say, hey, we've got an incoming warp signature. No. They don't do any of that. So we go back to the holodeck on this planet or the ship, and they talk to a Culber and Saru come across a hologram of the day Kaminar joined the Federation. So there's a bunch of Vulcans and other Federation people around, and they're like, yeah, we started running 125 years, 3 months, 17 days, and 4 hours ago. We're instructional to, protect the child while he grows, and you're here to rescue him, right? He's like, because if you're not here to rescue him, we'll initiate defense procedures. So of course they say, oh no, we're rescuers. So they clap. They're like, yay, you're here to rescue him. It's about damn time. And they explain to them that since the child has only seen other holograms, they changed their appearance of the people who beamed in to match the appearance of the people in the holograms. But in the holograms are all the Federation races, which includes humans, includes Trills, but includes humans. And of course it includes Kelpians, because the guy Sukal is a Kelpian. So why would the computer need to disguise a Kelpian and 2 humans? These races are already in the simulation. He is perfectly comfortable with seeing humans and Kelpians. Okay, I mean, if a Klingon tried to beam in, maybe you could say, oh, we can't have this poor thing be, emotionally traumatized by seeing a Klingork. So we have to, make them look human or something. But no, there's no reason they should have had to change the species of a human and a Kelpian to a Bajoran, a Trill, and another human. And another human. But just make them all the same species at least. Give me a reason to believe that this was programmed in. No, they changed a human to a Trill and a Kelpian to a human. I don't know. I don't know what to do. So they're asking, does this guy have a name? And no, they don't know. Nobody responds. So Michael is, she goes to check out what's behind the door. She picks up a rock and she finds this giant monster covered. It looks like almost like the smoke monster from Lost had sex with a big pile of seaweed. And this is what was created. And indeed, it is, in fact, turns out to be a monster from Kelpian legend that lives in the sea and is covered in kelp. So Michael, first she's going to hit it with a rock. Then she decides to put the rock down and make friends with the monster. And the monster doesn't seem all that, it looks scary, but it doesn't seem all that hostile at first. She's like, what are you? And the monster's looking at her. And then the monster, and for some reason that I really can't figure out, Michael just starts running away in fear. What changed from a minute before when she was talking to the monster? I don't know. But she starts running away in fear. She falls off a cliff and goes boom. Okay. Not dead, unfortunately. It is a holodeck, after all. So we go back to Discovery. The ship is now 2 minutes out. So 8 minutes have passed on Discovery. And Tilly only now is starting to think there is something really fishy about this ship. And she tells, hey, instead of scanning the ship, scan the area around the ship. Don't scan the ship, scan the area around the ship. And Owell's like, oh my God, neutrino emissions are off the scale. And Tilly's like, that's not a Federation ship. No shit. It's Osyraa. Obviously. So Tilly's like, oh shit. Hey, we've got a cloaking device since the retrofit, don't we? These are the words she says. She doesn't just say cloak. She has to let the audience know because we're too stupid to realize they didn't have a cloaking device before, that if she had just said cloak, we're like, well, when did they get a cloaking device? Well, obviously when they retrofitted the ship. So wait, if the Federation has cloaking devices, then why haven't they been running while cloaked all the time? They can't, oh, and of course, they can't jump while cloaked because, that would make things too easy. So Tilly orders the ship to be cloaked for the first time. And of course, the other ship has a cloaking device. So we have two cloaked ships that cloak basically next to each other and then don't seem to move. They keep their same relative positions and whatever. Back down, Michael wakes up after falling off the ledge, and the Kelpian guy is there waiting for her, Sukal. She doesn't know his name yet, but Sukal is there and says, "You're a program, right?" And Michael's like, yeah, I'm a program. He's like, "Oh, I knew you were a program," because Michael has already realized that he's never left the holodeck. So he's like, "Oh, what type of program are you? Combat?" And she's like, no, I'm social construct hologram. He's like, what? Social? What? Why the hell would there be a social hologram? I don't need a social hologram. She's like, well, family and things like that. Making connections with other sentient beings is very important to sentient beings, Michael says. And he's like, yeah, like the connection I have with the other holograms. And Michael's like, yeah, sort of. And she's like, what do you remember about your family? He's like, oh yeah, we used to go in the ocean and harvest the kelp, and I used to love the smell of that fresh ocean air and eat the kelp with my family. It was so great. And he's like, oh, okay. And he's like, yeah, but then that part of the hologram died, and that doesn't work anymore. She's like, no, what about before you came on a ship? He's like, before? He's like, before? He's like, some of the other holograms used to talk about before. They don't talk about that anymore. He's like, computer, reset hologram. And so Michael has to pretend she's a hologram and meeting him for the first time. So she starts talking about family from a different way. And at first, Sukal is happy, but so she's teaching him social dynamics, and so she resets him. Meanwhile, Osyraa hails Discovery and sees Tilly in command. She's like, where's your captain? And Tilly's like, I'm acting captain. Never, why do you say acting captain? Jesus Christ, people. Even in Star Trek 5, Chekhov, and I know it was part of the plan, but Chekhov said he was captain. You don't tell your enemy that your captain's not on board. You don't tell your enemy your captain is not on board your ship. You stupid mother effing idiots. Tilly's dead. The whole mirror universe doesn't come back. Tilly is like, I'm acting captain. So immediately Osyraa knows the captain's not on the ship. And Osira's like, he left you in charge? And Tilly's like, haha, you don't know anything about me. So, good chance. Good try. And Osira's like, oh, I know everything about you. You are a team player. You want to be everybody's friend. Am I getting close? And Tilly is like, yeah, you're just trying to do this. She's like, but deep down, you know you're a fraud. And Tilly's like, no. She's like, you're doing projection. Yeah, we had a guy on Earth in the 19th century, Freud. You're just projecting. I'm smarter than you. And Osyraa is like, no. Osyraa and Tilly have this cringy back and forth and like Owo and Detmer are like giving like a thumbs up to each other every time Tilly comes back with a witty response. Osyraa. And until he's like, listen, what do you want? What do you want? And Osyra's like, oh, I just want your ship, your spore drive, and your crew. Until he's like, no, you can't have it. Okay. Fine. So we go back down to the planet or the ship, and Saru and Culber are walking around, and they find an elder. And Saru's like, that's a Kelpian elder. Although Saru has never seen a Kelpian elder, I mean, in his village, the elders were like, what, 20, 30, 35, 40 years old? Kelpian elders really didn't exist because they all got culled before they got old. But he plays his first old Kelpian ever. And Culber's like, so that's the oldest Kelpian you've ever seen? And he's like, yep, oldest Kelpian I've ever seen. So you find the elder. The elder's like, do you want to hear a story? And they're like, no, we don't want to hear a story about your days on Kelpian, Kaminar. And they're like, we need to find the child. We need to find the guy. Meanwhile, in the elder's cave or wherever the hell he lives, his house, there's a painting, a drawing on the wall, and there's a name on the drawing. And Saru sees the name, and he realizes this was a drawing by the guy who's there. And he's like, there's a name here. It's Sukal. And Culber says, oh, does it translate to anything? And Saru's like, there's not a direct translation, but it means like beloved gift. And in Kelpian tradition, the first child born after a tragedy, you would name Sukal to mark the end of suffering. So remember, though, in Saru's Kaminar, your whole family gets eaten all the time. So how much bigger tragedy is there? I mean, what type of tragedy could befall a Kelpian family than to have their whole family culled and eaten? Because that happened to literally every family for generations and generations. But supposedly, I guess, there are bigger tragedies. And if you have one of those tragedies, you name your kid Sukal. Okay. So they realized, they asked, oh, who created this world to the elder? He's like, well, the mother, of course. So like, oh, Dr. Isa. Yeah, Dr. Isa did. So he's like, oh, they realize now for the first time that they created this entire hollow world to care and protect the child for as long as it would take for somebody to come rescue the son. Okay. But it's been running now 125 years, which if I had to guess was probably 124 years longer than they expected it to run. But it was so well programmed, it still works. It still works. Let's see. When Michael and Sukal were talking about families, Sukal, she brings up families again. Sukal gets mad and storms off. Michael looks down at her the back of her hand and sees a big giant radiation burn. So even though the holodeck is changing their species and projecting different clothes on them, and the clothes change depending where they are in the holodeck, and it's masking all their technology. It is not masking their wounds for whatever reason. It's not masking their wounds. So Michael's got a big radiation burn on her hand. When we see Culber and Saru, they've got radiation burns. Whatever reason, the hologram doesn't want to clear that up. So they ask Culber, when he sees all this radiation burn, he's like, listen, Saru, I know you want to talk with this old guy, but we really got to get going. And he's like, okay. And he's like, listen, do you know where the guy is, where the child is, where Sukal? Do you know where Sukal is? And the old guy, he's like, yeah. He's like, when he gets scared, he goes to his fortress. So, okay. So Culber says, I'll go find him. You can stay here and talk with this old man, because I know you're so, this is a thing for you, Saru. He's really, really happy to see an old Kelpian. So Culber walks off. Meanwhile, Saru asks if he can read the book that the Kelpian elder was reading, and it's like a child's a book for a child, a children's book, and he sees the statues that that Sukal was creating, this all-seeing eye totem pole thing that means protection, and he keeps it to keep the monster away. Oh, and the monster at the end of the book, not Grover. No, not Grover. This has the actual kelp monster at the end of the book as part of this book. And then the old guy asks, hey, do you want to hear a lullaby? And Saru says, yes, of course. So the old man sings Saru a lullaby while we get flashbacks from the episode where Saru was first picked up on Kaminar by Georgiou. So we have Saru reliving his childhood on Kaminar during this lullaby. The totems mean protection, and yes, the monster rises from the sea, and apparently this is an old story that even Saru remembers. The monster rises from the sea, and it's supposed to make Kelpians know they have to face their greatest fear, that they will never grow up until they face their greatest fear. The problem is, that is not at all how Kelpian society was before Saru. Okay, Vahari. They used to think Vahari was death, and they used to call. They never faced their greatest fears. So why would they have a story about facing your greatest fear and then never face your greatest fear? It doesn't make any sense. Just awful writing. Culber sees all these radiation burns. He tells Discovery, you better hurry back. But of course, he doesn't know if anybody can hear them. So they realize that, hey, how did Osyraa find us? And they're like, oh, Osyraa book is like maybe she must have been scanning for your jump signature or something. So like jump signatures, since when are jump signatures even a thing? But yeah, Osyraa hails. They found them. So back on the ship, back on the holodeck, we finally get the source of the burn. The Kelpian monster. The Kelpian monster is out because, the door got opened, and Sukal is building up his totem pole again to keep the monster away. But for whatever reason, the monster knocks over the totem pole and goes to attack Sukal, even though he's a hologram. And as the monster goes to attack Sukal reflectively, instinctively lets out some type of Care Bear stare situation. And it's in fact a burn. It's a baby burn this time, but it's a burn. And and then this big wave comes off the planet and goes through the nebula into space, and the Discovery and Osyraa's ship both get the thing, and Stamets is like, oh shit, take all the warp engines offline, take the dilithium out. It's another burn, and yeah, that's the burn. The burn. The burn. The burn. I can't even talk. The burn is when Sukal gets afraid of the monster and the monster touches him. That sets off the burn. Now, this was just a baby burn, so it doesn't actually destroy any ships. But if the monster really got him and he got really, really, really scared, then that would set off a real burn. So the burn happened 120 years ago. So Sukal was probably like 5 or 6 years old. The monster got out probably for the first time, and he tried to go face the monster when he was like 6 years old, and the monster scared him, and that's what caused the burn. And who is there to explain how is this even possible but the worst doctor in the fleet in over 100 centuries, 10 centuries, Dr. Culber. They're like, how is this possible that he caused the burn? He's like, well, you know, all this subspace radiation and the dilithium in the planet, and it must have happened. Life finds a way to adapt, and he must have happened in utero, because let's just throw out the word in utero. And that explains it. That explains why this kid can cause the burn. My God. Oh my God. So Tilly is like, they got to jump away. And Stamets is like, no, you can't leave them. She's like, we'll come back for them, I promise. But I can't let the ship be taken. So she orders Stamets meanwhile, she's talking to Osyraa. She orders Stamets into the chamber. And she says, okay, black alert, while she's still talking to Osyraa. And just as they're about to jump away, a bunch of people insta-beam from Osyraa's ship right into the spore chamber. They knew exactly where to go, and they come with rifles. They're aimed at Stamets, and they pull him off the spore chamber. And then more people start beaming onto the ship. And Stamets is like, I'm never going to help you. They're like, it doesn't matter what you want. And they just like put this thing on Stamets' head just a minute ago. And it basically makes him into a mindless zombie. So basically it'll do whatever they want him to do. I don't know if it's a throwback to the Spock's Brain episode where he wore the thing around his head and they were able to remote control Spock. But it's very similar to that. His eyes go white. So Osyraa just beams on the bridge. Nobody on Discovery is armed. Osyraa pulls Tilly off the chair. And she takes Discovery. She takes it. She's like, oh, and you already have Federation headquarters programmed into the drive. So this is going to be so easy for me. So then she asks, hey, what is it that you say right before you jump? Now she heard what she says. She heard it's black alert. But of course, Tilly doesn't say what it is. Meanwhile, right. So they wanted to save the people. So once again, Book says, I'll take my ship. So Book left. Book left on his ship to go rescue Michael Burnham and the other people. Adira talks to Jet Reno and says, Jet, they're all going to die down there. I have an idea. I need to borrow your badge. She takes Jet Reno's badge and she beams on to Book's ship. So Book and Adira go find Michael Burnham. And they go find Michael Burnham and the rest of the crew. And it turns out that Culber and Saru are going to stay. They shouldn't stay, but Culber and Saru are going to stay to find the kid and talk to him. Michael Burnham's the only one who beams back because she's going to go help Tilly. So, and Adira says, listen, I'm taking this radiation medicine. She somehow knows that if she holds it in her hand, it's not going to be there when they land, when she beams down. So she puts it in her mouth so that I assume once she beams down, she can spit it out of her mouth, even though the program is going to turn her into some other species, right? Maybe she becomes, God forbid, a white heterosexual male or something. Or, as I suspect, the program's going to turn her into gray or something, but whatever. So she puts it in her mouth so that when she beams down, she can spit it out and still have the radiation pills to give to Saru and Culber. Michael and Book head back to Discovery. Book never tells Michael on the way that, oh yeah, Osyraa found us, by the way. So it's not till they get there. And Osyra's ship has tentacles. Osyra's ship has tentacles. Now, Osyra's ship is like 10 times bigger than the Discovery. It's got tentacles, and his tentacles wrap around Discovery. And Michael Burnham and Book come, and they come out of the Nebula, and they, for whatever reason, he can survive the Nebula this time, even though last time it knocked him out and he needed to come home on autopilot. This time he survives it just fine. Just in time to see Discovery, wrapped in tentacles, jump away with Osyra's ship. So the Discovery can jump if another starship touches it. Even a huge starship, 10 times its size, if it wraps its tentacles around Discovery, they both jump away. Everything jumps with it. So apparently, they could jump a whole freaking space station if they were just in physical contact with Discovery. That's the game changer. Did they not know this before? They could jump entire space stations across the galaxy instantly. They could jump other ships. Maybe they should have told this to the Federation, right? Maybe the Federation would have said, oh, take a couple of ships with you on your rescue mission. We'll just, dock them to your port before you jump, and they'll go with you. No, because this would have been too easy. So, Osyraa doesn't even have to abandon her ship. She just takes Discovery and her ship, and presumably, we don't know where they went. Presumably, they beamed right to Federation headquarters, where Osyraa is going to try to destroy the Federation. Now, how did Osyraa get there so quickly? Well, Book says, there's a hyperspace conduit that happens to let out right here. Hyperspace conduit. Always one when you need one. There's happened to be a hyperspace conduit from Kaminar because she was at Kaminar, to the Viribian Nebula. He's like, but you'd have to be crazy to take it, because you have less than a 50% chance of surviving, or a 50% chance of surviving if you take a subspace tunnel, apparently, for whatever reason. I don't know. That's what they told us last time. So she would have to have been crazy to use it. Obviously, she was. She used the subspace tunnel to get to the Nebula really quickly, within minutes of Discovery being there. And so now, for next week, we already saw them jump away. So for next week, and I'll play it. Basically, Michael's like, we've got to get back on the Discovery. So obviously, they're going to use a subspace corridor, because they can't beam. They can't warp all the way to Federation headquarters. It would take too long. And so they're going to have to get back on Discovery. Michael and Book have to crash their ship into Discovery's shuttle bay, and they got to try to retake the ship. It doesn't look good for the Discovery crew right now. They're all being held hostage, and unless Osyraa is the dumbest, worst, least intelligent supervillain ever, which she very well might be, she's already won. But like Khan, every supervillain has to have their flaw, and like Khan, he could have left with a ship and everything he wanted if he could only have gotten over the fact that he didn't kill Kirk. He could have won. And I'm sure Osyraa will have the same fatal flaw. Something will be like, but you didn't get me, Osyraa. If you wanted me, Osyraa, I'm still here. You're going to have to come down here. And Osyraa will do something stupid, and the Federation will get back. And, so what about this guy who can cause another burn? We don't know. Adira is going to be the savior of Culber and Saru. Personally, I mean, the easy thing to do would be to kill the guy. I mean, obviously they're not going to do that, but you kill the guy, he probably can't make any more burns. I guess they're going to try to talk him off his ship. I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen. I don't care. I'm not even, it's not even worth trying to think it up, because I spent who knows how much time wondering what the cause of the burn is, only to find out the cause of the burn is literally a kid who grew up around dilithium and subspace radiation, and he causes a burn anytime he gets scared. And it's like, why did you waste your time? I want to just smack myself across the face for even thinking that. This was a terrible episode, terribly written. They don't even remember what they were doing in the last episode. They don't remember what they're doing in this episode. You know, were they holograms or weren't they holograms? God only knows. Tentacles around the Discovery. The entire ship beams away. Subspace corridors that are scary to use, but people use them all the time. They just happen to go. Travel time between Kaminar and the Nebula is literally minutes. And once again, long range subspace transmissions, perfectly doable. Admiral Vance, once again, hologrammed into Discovery, even though it was at the, Verubian Nebula. God knows how far away that is from Federation headquarters, but it's not close. But Admiral Vance, he could do instant subspace communications with Discovery. Still, nobody has contacted that poor man who was waiting 40 years at the beginning of the season for somebody from Starfleet to come by. He doesn't have any long-range communications. Apparently, nobody in the galaxy has long-range communications except Discovery and Admiral Vance. Why didn't Saru tell anybody that Dr. Osyraa was pregnant? It wasn't radiation burns. Who knows? If Booker's ship has autopilot, why not let it just go? Why does he have to be on the ship? Who knows? If Osyraa was at Kaminar, why would she go to Kaminar? If she could track Discovery, what did she have to go to Kaminar for? It's terrible. It's terrible. Why is the chief medical officer taking care of a fucking cat? Excuse my language, and I know that on Enterprise, Dr. Phlox took care of Porthos, but that was the first real Starfleet exploration ship, okay? And that was the captain's pet, okay? Porthos was above and beyond grudge. I'm sorry, okay? And there was only one doctor. On all of Enterprise, there's only one doctor. Okay, there are many doctors on Discovery somehow. Even with the skeleton crew, there are multiple doctors. The chief medical officer shouldn't be taking care of somebody's cat. God. Do human bodies react negatively to heights? Some do. Saru, you should know this. You've lived amongst humans for a long time. You surely know what fear of heights is. Why would you even ask such a stupid question? Better yet, why would you even get a fear of heights? Because your body has been changed to look like a human, but you're not actually a human. I don't know. Why did they have to change them at all? Kelpians and humans are part of the program. They're part of the Federation. He's not going to be scared by a Kelpian and a human. Hell, they should have changed them all to Kelpians if they were going to be afraid. I don't know. Poor Saru, completely off, not written to character, making awful decisions. Michael Burnham, dare questioning Saru's decisions. Who is she? Who is she to question Saru? Oh, the bullshit. And I know it's a minor nitpick, but this bullshit that the Discovery and the Shinzu share the same captain's chair from the same San Francisco shipyard, decades apart, even after a major refit, and that this, half an inch or a quarter inch of steel or whatever it was, whatever type of metal it was, could possibly have been rubbed off by Georgiou's thumb in, even if it was 2 decades of her being the captain, which she clearly wasn't a captain for 20 years. But even if she was, rubbing her thumb on a piece of metal for 20 years is not going to make it rub off. Okay? It's just not going to do it. It's fucked. It's all fucked. This whole episode, I rate it like this is the episode that I was worrying about all season. This is it. This is how bad it gets. This is 2 out of 10, and I'm being generous because somehow, even though there's only 2 episodes left, I have a feeling it's going to get worse. 2 out of 10. This episode is total garbage. There is nothing to redeem this episode. Skip it if you can. That's it. I'm done. Qapla all. Oh, it's also the longest episode, over almost 55 minutes. So this is probably a long review. I have no idea. Qapla all. Bird out.